Okay, welcome to another edition of the Amazing Adventure book. Of course, I'm in a different location. I'm aboard up here today. We're going into the second part of Revelation, which is a really exciting story. The first part we saw last week was the first 7 chapters of Revelation. Now, this is written by the Apostle John. We've been going over all his writings. We saw the Gospel of John. We did that a couple weeks back. Then we did 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, the epistles. Again, if you hear background noise here, I'm in a different location because I'm down here getting teeth done and also dermatology. But it's a good time to be here. Great location, and it's great to study the Revelation together in this way. And if you on YouTube, if you haven't subscribed yet, do that. Ring the bell for notification because I'll be having part 3 next week, and you get notified when that comes out. We also on our website have the animation videos, and I'm actually talking to the young guys down here where I'm at about that. They're working on those, and we're in the animation video of Noah right now. So we're going through all 31 of those stories. Now today we're going over chapter 8 through 15, and this is the trumpets. And so the first 7 seals, the seals are like a signet ring and a hot wax seal on a scroll, and Jesus comes, and in chapter 5, or we see the 7 seal book in chapter 5, we see in chapter 6 he begins to unseal each seal, and the first 4 are the horsemen. The first one is the white horse comes to conquering to conquer, and we see war, famine, and then pestilence, and then the 5th seal is martyrdom of the saints. And again, that's in chapter 7 of Revelation. And then in the 6th seal, we see the skies open up like a scroll. We see Jesus descending on the clouds, which is parallel to Matthew 24 and also 1 Thessalonians 4. And now in chapter 8, we get to these trumpets. Trumpets are like an announcement, and it's when God pours out. Once the church has been taken out, Jesus came. Now God pours out his wrath, and he's announcing the wrath to come. And the first trumpet is a third of the grass and the trees are burned up. Then the second one is a third of the seas and the ships are destroyed. And then the third one is a third of the springs and rivers, fresh waters destroyed. And then the fourth one is a third of the sun, moon, and stars are darkened. And those are the first 4. Then we have the 3 woes, which are the last 3 trumpets. And the 5th one, the first woe, is for 5 months men are tormented. The men that don't have the mark, the 144,000 don't have the mark of Christ on them, are tormented. And it's a terrible time. They're stung by something like scorpions. And this is again the wrath of God being poured out. And then the sixth seal, or the 6th woe, which is the same as the 6th trumpet, is a third of mankind are killed. We also see in chapter 10, those are chapter 9 or chapter 9 through 11 that we see there. In chapter 10, we see the little book, which is sweet to the taste but bitter to the stomach. And then in chapter 11, we see the 2 witnesses, which is really cool. It's these 2 guys preaching the gospel in Jerusalem, and people don't like it. They end up getting martyred. And people are celebrating so much that they're gone. They don't have to hear the gospel anymore, that they give gifts to each other. But then 3.5 days later, God raises them from the dead and takes them right up to heaven. That's in chapter 11. And all these things happen in sequence from chapters 1 through 11 in Revelation. It happens in sequence from the seals to the trumpets. That's the first seals all the way through 6, or the first 3.5 years of the tribulation of the Antichrist. The 5th seal is the great tribulation where saints are martyred, then Christ comes back, 6th seal. Then we see the trumpets in the next chapter, like we said, chapter 8 through 11, and continue the progression with God's wrath being poured out after he's already taken his church out. But there'll be other saints still coming to Christ, people on the earth during that time. God's pouring out his wrath. You see the third of everything getting destroyed here, and the 5 months torment, third of mankind killed. Then the 7th trumpet is the announcement of the 7 bowls, and those are very similar to the trumpets. They kind of overlap. They're not exactly the same. Some are the same, but they overlap and they correlate with each other, I believe. And the 7 seals are the first part. And so the chapter 12 through the end of Revelation is is sort of a little bit out of sequence because chapter 12 goes back to the birth of Christ. So if you can understand that, it helps you understand the whole book a little bit better. Because you see the woman with the 12 stars, it's like the 12 tribes of Israel. The child's born from the woman, that's Jesus coming on the scene. Satan's trying to destroy the child. And then we see, and that's in chapter 12, and in chapter 13 we see the martyrdom again, martyrdom of the saints, where it's called the Great Tribulation, where the mark of the beast is implemented. If you don't have the mark, then you can't buy or sell, and you'll be a lot of people, a lot of the Christians at that time will be martyred and killed. And then we see the false prophet as well. And so Satan's orchestrated this whole thing with the beast. The beast actually has a mortal wound. He's killed. He's raised from the dead. So he kind of imitates Christ. And then people worship him because they think, wow. So if you don't worship him, you don't take the mark of the beast, you'll be saved. Your name will be written in the book of life. And those that do will be judged. And we see that going into chapter 14, again, we see the 144,000, which we already talked about early on in some of the early chapters. That's the 12,000 from each tribe. They're pure, chaste, virgin, pure of each of the tribes. So it's going to be hard to find them, so I'm not sure how God's going to do that miracle. And then you got the eternal gospel being preached to the whole world. We talk about in evangelism, preaching the gospel to the whole world, then Christ will come back. Well, he's got an angel doing that as well. I mean, we're part of the plan, but we're not going to probably be the ultimate. It's going to be him with the angel preaching that gospel in the end to the whole world. And then let's see, we see at the same time the 144,000 are seen. We also see all the nations, tribes, tongues worshiping God before his throne, because we've already been taken out at this point. And then we see the wrath of God being poured out again. So it's kind of a replay of what we saw in the first 11 chapters. And this is chapter 12, 13, 14, and then 15. We see the 7 bowls that are going to begin. And again, the bowls here, which we'll see next week, 16 through 19, is kind of an overlapping of the trumpets, what we've just seen. And then we see Christ coming back again. Just like when he came back, we'll see his return at the end of the 7-year period. We see the first 3.5 years of the Antichrist, the tribulation of Antichrist. The middle of that period of time is a great tribulation with the martyrdom of the saints. Then the sky opens up, Christ comes back, takes his church out, and then you see the next 3.5 years of Christ, God pouring out his wrath on the earth. And it's going to be an exciting time at the very end of that when Christ does return again, and with the sword of his mouth destroys the Antichrist, false prophet, throws him like fire. But we'll get to that in part 3. And then in part 4 of our series of this Revelation study, we're going to see in chapter 20 through 22, the millennium and the book of life, and then the new heavens and new earth, and also the tree of life. So it's just a beautiful ending to an amazing story throughout the whole Bible, which is one unified story that leads to Jesus. And thank you for joining me on this. I hope you take it to heart, especially in these times we live in, and that you'll be being part of the church, part of preaching the gospel to every person that wants to hear it. In Jesus' name, God bless you.